this meeting for 4 p.m. Finance and Audit Committee. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Member Arias, absent. Vice Chair Carbasi.
Present.
And Chair Esparza.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay. I don't think we have any changes or items removed from the agenda.
This is correct.
Okay, sounds good. And go ahead and we have the approval of the minutes from the last meeting on May 13th, 2024.
And can we get a real quick vote on approval of the agenda?
Did I miss that? Oh, yeah, we'll go ahead and approve the agenda. All motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Any opposition? Seeing none, agenda passes. We have an approved agenda. I'll take a motion for approval of the minutes for the last meeting.
So moved.
Seconded. Any opposition? Seeing none, we have approved the minutes. At this point, I'll go ahead and take unscheduled communication for the meeting. If any member of the public would like to speak, you have 3 minutes to go ahead and speak. So at this time, I'll ask anyone who would like to comment on unscheduled communication, come forward at this time. Seeing no one in the chamber coming forward, go ahead and close unscheduled communication, and we'll move on to our first item, which is an update on the internal control review. And this is sponsored by the Finance Department.
Good afternoon. You got the mic there, Bernard? Can you hear me okay? Good afternoon, committee members, viewing public, Santino Denisi, City Controller and Finance Director. If you wouldn't mind, if we could take the items in reverse order, I would love to start with the ACFR presentation, if the committee members are amenable to that.
That's fine, yeah. We'll go ahead and move. We'll take backwards. We only have a couple items, so we'll go ahead and do the 2024 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, also sponsored by Finance.
Great, thank you, Chair Esparza. And part of the reason for that is I'll go ahead and introduce. We have our external auditor here today is going to come up and join me here in a few minutes, Andrew Roth from the Poon Group, and so he's going to join me in this presentation. But before we get to that, I just also wanted to introduce and highlight a few of our team members. Joining me today is Assistant Controller Caleb Newfield, our Division Manager of Accounting, Kalmajit Kaur, other members of our accounting team, Jocelyn Freitas and Enrique Herrera are here with us today too. Roberta Cope, unfortunately, couldn't be with us, but I normally do this at the conclusion of the presentation, but since I'm going to be handing it off to Andrew, I just want to publicly thank them so much for their great amount of work and effort that went into the financial statement preparation, all the audit work, and ultimately, I don't want to steal his thunder, but the results of the audit we're very excited about and happy to share, of course, and I just could not be more thankful for all the hard work and dedication that they put in, countless hours at sacrifice to their family and friends. I'm really grateful for the work that they did on behalf of the city. So thanks for indulging me. I appreciate that. I'll go ahead and move into the presentation. First, so just a brief overview. This is something obviously the council sees annually, but the annual comprehensive financial report is a required financial report from the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. It's something that we present as a compilation of the city's financial performance in all respects. It must be audited by an independent auditor, which is why Mr. Roth is with us today. And today what we're presenting on is the 2023-24 ACFR results, which is for the year concluding June 30th, 2024. In your materials, you received the entire report. Really on slide 3, I won't go into any great length of detail, but it's just kind of a high-level summary of the performance between the general fund and all funds. But at this time, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mr. Roth to take us the rest of the way through the presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair and members of the public and other city employees. So first, I'm Andrew Roth, audit partner with the Poon Group. We are the external auditors for the city of Fresno. So there's we'll go through a few items. One's going to be the scope of work. So the scope of work we're engaged to audit for the city of Fresno or perform procedures is going to be the financial statement audit. That's going to be the ACFR, the main document you have in your hand. That goes through the entire city. We'll kind of go into some required communication on that. There is a compliance audit. Also, it's compliance and financial statement audit. It's the single audit that's going to be the CFA, your Schedule of Expenditure of Federal Awards. We will have a slide on that as well. PFC audit, that's going to be passenger facility charges. That we do audit kind of those charges, and that's kind of coming up big because you guys are able to put some of the expansion on the airport in those charges. So that is another audit that we do perform. And we also do, again, agreed upon procedure. So there are some required communications under the audit codified auditing standards at 260. As part of the audit is a kind of collaborative process between the auditors and management. We both have responsibilities. First, we'll go through some of management's. Management's responsible for the financial statements, to present the financial statements in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America, to adopt sound accounting policies, to establish and maintain internal controls over financial reporting and compliance, to provide evidence supporting the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements, and management's also responsible for the fair presentation of financial statements that are free from material misstatements where they're due to fraud or error. Management's also responsible to prevent and detect fraud. Auditors, so we as the auditors we're responsible to perform the audit in conformity with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America and the standards applicable to financial audits contained in the government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. We are responsible to communicate with those charged with governance. This is the communication. We also have a letter that we will be issuing later today and providing to management. We also are responsible to assess audit risk of internal control over financial reporting, to determine the fairness of the presentation of the financial statements, and at the end of the audit, to render an opinion on the financial statements. We also, if there were any, issue recommendations to management. At this time, any recommendations were verbal recommendations because they did not reach the level of a reportable finding that would need to be communicated. So that is good. Some other communication are significant accounting policies. If you really want a good overview of the financial statements, about the reporting entity, about the different policies that were used by council and some estimates that are discussed there, go to Note 1. That's a really good one. It also discusses in Note 1 that we did implement GASB Statement 100. That did not have a significant effect on the city. I know the last 2 years we've had leases and subitas, and next year we got compensated absences, so we got like a little bit of a breather this year with no significant implementations. So to prepare the financial statements, the management is required to make some estimates, and some are more significant than others. Some of those estimates include the fair value of investments, the allowance for accounts receivable, the depreciation on capital assets, so this would be the useful life, how long you expect an asset or infrastructure to last for. Risk management claim liability, and also a big one is going to be your net pension and OPEB liabilities or assets. Sensitive disclosures, so these are some of the main, as I said, Note 1 is a pretty large disclosure. Note 2, cash investments, I'd say the biggest part of cash investments would probably be, there's more in the pension trust, because the city does not have that risk of investment policy, so but there still is a pretty big note there. You'll see the capital assets and long-term debt, but as always, you'll want to go to that employee benefits programs. That's going to be your pension and OPEB. That's going to be the larger areas that have a bigger effect on the city. As for misstatements, there were 2 uncorrected misstatements and no corrected misstatements. So the 2 uncorrected misstatements, that just means they were over our below, and it was a difference below our trivial amount, but nowhere close to material. So we just had to note that they were uncorrected misstatements. Also, consultation with our accountants. This would be like auditor shopping or opinion shopping. Management informed us that, and to our knowledge, there was no consultations with other accountants regarding auditing or other matters. Significant difficulties, we encountered none with management during the year, and we also had no disagreements with management in terms of accounting treatments nor audit procedures performed. Group audits, this is the communication to let you know that we did refer to other auditors as part of our audit. There were large pieces of the audit that were not audited by us, so we are referring to the other auditor's report, but we do certain procedures to verify that audit is performed by a competent firm, and that's going to obviously be the pension trust related to both pension funds as well as the successor agency housing, and then also so it'd be those 2. Yeah. As for audit results, that's what we're all here today to talk about. It was a clean opinion. That is an unmodified opinion for all opinion units. What that states is the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. The accounting policies have been consistently applied, estimates are reasonable, and disclosures are properly reflected in the financial statements. Also, there was no disagreements with managements. There was no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, so no findings identified in internal control or financial reporting during the year. There was no accounting issues, and also no inappropriate activities were noted. To get to the results for the single audit, as I stated before, the single audit.
I just want to pause.
Yeah.
I know this is like a boring, there's nobody in here, but I just really want to acknowledge that's a really big deal. We're a huge organization. And I want to give kudos to Santino and Caleb and their entire team. No material weaknesses and or significant deficiencies, no accounting issues, no inappropriate activities, unmodified opinion. That is a huge accomplishment, you guys. So thank you, auditor. I just wanted to make sure I acknowledge, because I know this is the kind of work that is behind the scenes, that is not really visible, but if it was not this, it would have huge implications for us as a city. So thank you, team. Mr. Chair, sorry.
No news is good news, as they say.
Exactly. True. All right, so here we are. This is going to be our results for the single audit. So the single audit is going to be, that's going to be an audit of all federal funds. So we do use a risk-based approach to determine the major programs every year. This year, the programs were highway planning and construction, as well as the ARPA fund, which is the state and local fiscal recovery fund. One thing to note about the ARPA is that typically if there aren't findings on a program that's over $3 million, it's audited every 3 years. But until that ARPA money is gone, that is audited every single year. So there is an audit on ARPA funds every year. So just to note that that is from the OMB guidance, that is a required program to be audited yearly. So the results, once again, unmodified all the way across. That's unmodified on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance and other matters. Specifically, because in there, the CFA schedule is a financial statement. And also compliance with each major program and internal control over compliance, also unmodified, which is a clean opinion. Also noted in schedule of findings and question costs, once again, there were no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies reported. Questions?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Back on the slide regarding the uncorrected misstatements, can you go over that one more time? Just, just to kind of cover that and elaborate a little
so
more.
That was, I did like to, pretty much it just means that there was a difference between again, trivial for us is like a pretty low number. So anything above that, but between what the number should be and what the number is, would make it required to be recorded as an uncorrected misstatement. I believe this was an error and it was an overstatement, I think, of a 96 liability, GASB 96, so that's going to be related to your subscription liabilities. So you're actually understating the net position. But we had to note it because it is an amount there's a difference above our small trivial amount. That was a difference between, but how they got there, I think the explanation is best from the finance department.
Sure, okay. To that point, some more question for finance. The presentations, obviously the report are very, very technical. Have we made any strides in sort of making it more digestible? Not the actual report. The report is what it is. Any strides in just making it kind of more transparent for the public to be able to digest or read?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Esparza. Actually, so there is a lot to digest, very technical document, certainly. What I would point to is at the front of the report, there's what's called the Controller's Transmittal Letter, and then also management's discussion and analysis, about, 20 pages in total that tries to put the results into more layman's terms and describe some of the notable significant items, describe some of the differences and variances between the prior year and the current year.
Sure, yeah, puts it in English. Okay, yeah, thank you, Director.
Chair Esparza, if I could also add on that. One other thing about the controller's transmittal letter is it gives a nice layperson's overview of the structure of our financial statements, put some charts and graphs in there as well that are specifically meant to be more friendly to the public.
Great. Vice Chair Carbasi, any questions? Or
None at this time. Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
yeah, I think that'll be it for this item.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you again, Will, and again, thank you to the staff. Appreciate their work so much. With that, we'll move on to our second item that we have prepared today, which is an update on the internal control review. And before I hand this portion over to Assistant Controller Newfield, I'll just remind and begin with some context for what this presentation is for. You may recall at our last Finance and Audit Committee meeting there, and actually previous to that, there was a desire of the committee to do a quote-unquote deep dive on specifically finance department policies, procedures, and just kind of an assessment of the protocol and the work that was happening there. So we had, well over a year now, went out to RFP for that work, ultimately selected Price Page and Company to do that work. We presented the results of their work, their assessment at our last Finance and Audit Committee meeting, specifically on our accounts payable section, our utility billing and collection area, and business tax and license area. And so today what we have for you is we've taken their report, we've done a lot of work, a lot of great work, which is why I want Caleb to come up and describe, because he and his team have led that effort. And just as a report back out to the committee and the public, kind of walk through some of the things we've either enhanced, some things we may still be working on. And so that's what he's going to do with the next few slides, and then I'll come up and let you know where we're at with the remaining work to be done after the conclusion of today's meeting. So with that, I'll hand it over to Caleb.
All right. Good afternoon. As Santino said, my name is Caleb Newfield, the Assistant Controller, and today I'm happy to provide an update on the internal control review recommendations that Price Page provided back in November of 2023. He provided some context as to why we had that report done. I do want to emphasize our team has done a tremendous job over the past year at implementing these recommendations and making sure that we have adequate controls in place. All right, so we'll be covering accounts payable and disbursements, and then UB&C, or utility billing and collection, and then business tax and license. So we will start off with talking about accounts payable. So there were 3 recommendations related to general reporting and operations, and these recommendations included improving and creating policies and procedures, providing training resources to internal staff, and then exploring options for the whistleblower hotline. As a result of these recommendations, we have implemented new and updated standard operating procedures that further define policies and procedures within, or for all activities within the accounts payable section. In addition, we've also are ensuring that our accounts payable staff are receiving internal training, and it's continuous training. We're actually meeting with them once a week, picking a topic, and then focusing on that topic for that week. And we're talking about existing and any new procedures or processes that we've implemented. And then in regards to the whistleblower hotline, we are still exploring options for that. So there were 5 recommendations related to control activities for accounts payable, and these included defining policy around in-person check pickups, transitioning vendor management outside of accounts payable to another department, ensuring that user access control and workflow roles in the financial system are established, creating controls for duplicate or identifying duplicate payments, and then improving the timeliness and communication between finance, accounts payable, and other departments. So I do want to let you guys know the recommendation for in-person check pickups has been implemented, And I've outlined that in the slide if you want more information about what we've done there. For vendor management, it was recommended that vendor management be transitioned outside of the accounts payable department, and that's due to separation of duties. As you may recall, there was concern with having our accounts payable staff be the ones that are also paying the bills, but also changing, approving, and adding vendor additions to the vendor table. So we want to make sure that we have adequate separation of duties there. And we have since transitioned that work to the purchasing department. Let's see, the recommendation for user controls and workflow rules in the financial system are also currently in progress, and we continue to analyze and assess all user roles within the system to ensure consistency across the system. For the duplicate check payment recommendation, we did implement a control back in 2023, and I think that was probably one of the first controls I implemented as the assistant controller. And that control is utilized before every payable cycle to ensure there's no duplicate payments being sent out to vendors. And then the recommendation related to department communication has also been implemented, and we are currently working to develop a formal documentation that further defines the expectations for invoice submission from departments to accounts payable. Price Page also had 4 other recommendations, 3 of which have since been implemented and 1 that's currently in progress. We have implemented the recommendation related to workflow logic to ensure that users are not able to directly approve their own inputs in the financial system. For example, a user cannot create an invoice and then directly approve their own invoice. Another individual within that workflow approval process would have to review, approve it before that invoice or that item gets moved on along the workflow approval process. The workflow approval threshold recommendation is currently in progress right now, and this is an ongoing analysis that we're needing to do to determine the potential impact for any recommendations that we present in the future. And then for the control monitoring recommendation, we have implemented key metrics and performance indicators to monitor activities within the accounts payable department. For example, every day I'm looking at a report that shows the average invoice age, the invoice volume by department, and the total number of invoices by vendors, essentially trying to find any area of concern and handling that quickly, efficiently, and making sure that our vendors are paid timely and that we're not put on any holds. And then lastly, training videos have been created, and they are available on Cornerstone for citywide staff to utilize. And we discuss best practices for how to process an invoice, and this will be something that we continue to monitor. If there's a need to add additional videos, we will do so in the future. All right, we will now transition to the recommendations that Price Page made as it relates to collections, which would include utilities, billing, and collections, UB&C, and business tax and license. There are 4 recommendations related to general reporting and operations, and these included improving policies and procedures for both UB&C and business tax and license, enhancing staff training for UB&C, conducting cross-training for troubleshooting the utility billing software, and then creating a new report to more effectively identify delinquent accounts or utility accounts. As of current, UB&C and business tax and license are continuing to review and update standard operating procedures and written documentation to ensure that we have alignment across the board with all our current procedures and processes that we have right now. In addition, UB&C is also currently working on updating their training and onboarding materials to ensure that all new staff members understand department expectations and then all our processes. Ultimately, this will lead to better customer service for our utility customers. UB&C is also cross-training an additional staff member at this time to troubleshoot the utility billing software, and this will help prevent key person dependencies if there is an issue and someone's out of the office or if there's turnover in the future. Lastly, UB&C has also developed and created a new report within the billing software to more effectively identify delinquent accounts. For control activities, internal controls continue to be reviewed and evaluated for monitoring activity and other key metrics or KPIs for both UB&C and business tax and license. In addition, there are several items related to business tax and license that have been addressed. For example, The supervisor and senior leads continue to regularly review, question, and investigate any variances with deposits. In addition, we are also doing a deposit reconciliation daily, and that's a part of our improved cash handling procedures and processes that we implemented in the fall of 2023. In addition, controls have also been built to mitigate the manipulation or misuse of payments received through the mail. And there's another recommendation about how we store information on our, shared drives, and information on shared drives is all backed up now, and only the appropriate stakeholders or staff have access to that. Lastly, additional controls to ensure that changes to business accounts are appropriate have been ongoing, and we continue to review that. And then last but not least, there was another recommendation in regards to our cash handling and procedures. As I mentioned just a little while ago, we did implement a formal policy and procedures for cash handling, specifically as it relates to the dual custody and the dual counting of cash, and that was implemented in the fall of 2023. Lastly, we have also addressed some other comments and recommendations that Price Page provided as it pertains to UB&C. For example, the online application recommendation for UB&C has been improved, so we're now using an abbreviated form to expedite the review of online applications, so this speeds up that review process and gets those accounts set up quicker. UB&C is also continuing to promote electronic payment options, and wherever needed, we're here to provide assistance to the public if they have any questions or if they need help making a payment online. In addition, UB&C is currently collaborating with DPU in exploring options for more accurate and timely meter readings as it relates to the automatic meter reading analysis recommendation that Price Page had. Lastly, a call tracking system has been upgraded, and this now provides a better detail in assessing service levels and ultimately providing more customer service for utility customers. Santina will now provide a brief update on existing audits. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll just provide some closing comments here on kind of what's next and where we're at with some other work. So we also have this same set of assessment that's happening currently with our accounts receivable sections, grants management, payroll, and treasury. So Price Page's work is nearly completed, and so by the time we'll be in front of you again, we'll certainly have those reports to share. In light of that, we previously had Parks and Airport as a department area of focus for the Finance and Audit Committee work. But a couple things have happened, so we haven't quite completed those yet. First, I will say the priority was certainly the Finance Department's internal control, so that's been the brunt of where our work has been focused over the last year. And we also have, we've had some staffing changes in the internal audit function, and one of the members there has also been primarily focused on the work for our cannabis dispensaries and making sure that, helping to support Jen Ruiz to make sure they're in compliance with some of the financial statement reporting and other factors. And so I am pleased to share that we've now brought on to the city another staff member who, as chance would have it, previously worked in the internal audit function. So much of that cannabis oversight work that we've been helping to support, that frankly has grown, will be transitioned, and she'll be able to do it very capably now. So we feel good about that. And that will help free up our team's bandwidth to now, again, get back to some of these other department areas of focus. So by the time we're back together, plan to have a more meaningful update on some of those other areas. And so, I'm sorry, with that, I wasn't sure if City Manager wanted to add anything, but if there's any other questions you have about the report or the update, please to answer them.
Yeah, no, thank you to yourself and to Assistant Controller. Just a few questions as we were going through the presentation. I know there was a number of things where there's kind of ongoing. One of the first ones was the whistleblower hotline. Do we have a timeline on that at all, or still just trying to really figure out how to...
I don't really have a timeline. So really what we're trying to assess there is that there's the purpose of a whistleblower hotline, obviously, is to express anonymous concerns. And so in a variety of manners. And so I think there is ability for both employees and citizens to do that in a variety of different means. So we're trying to determine the best way to either consolidate or where it makes sense to consolidate if necessary. And so I hope to have maybe some thoughts on that by the next time we'd be together for sure.
And let me add, one of the things we're trying to filter through is the finance department is a very small department. And when you open up something that's a whistleblower department, I don't want the precious finance staff. They're going to get, I'm sure, the types of anonymous complaints or complaints that I get. Oh, I saw this city employee sleeping in their truck, or I saw someone doing this, or I saw someone doing that. I think we would get a lot of those types of complaints, not directly tied to finances. And so we're trying to, I want to make sure that we don't overburden the small finance staff with those types of complaints. So we're trying to kind of find a way to make sure that those types of complaints go to the right place.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. With respect to the business tax license, I was wondering if, sort of similar to what's been implemented on the billing side, do we already have a report that identifies past due accounts for business tax?
We do, and so some of the work that Caleb was alluding to that he's implemented is trying to be more strategic about, because we have a limited amount of staff that can't go get after or call or reach out to every delinquent account. So being smart and strategic about where and how we do that outreach. So Caleb's generated a number of metrics and reports to help guide the staff in that manner. I think that's what you were getting at, right? If I'm understanding the question right.
Yeah. That's where I was headed. Looking at the 8th slide, with respect to promotion of the electronic payments for UBC, and just, what sort of methods is the department utilizing to promote electronic payment?
Yeah, so this is one we've been talking about a lot lately because we have a lot of postage and printing costs in relation to sending out bills. So to answer your question, the methods have been primarily about encouraging customers as they call in if they have challenges in making their bill. I would call it more informal type assistance. We're trying to begin, actually, I think in the next couple of weeks, billing a little bit more of a communication campaign via mailer with the invoice. But frankly, I think it's going to take a little bit more than that, and we're trying to research some other strategies that we can utilize to motivate customers to move in that direction.
I think that is definitely an area where we've also identified through the budget process, because of increased postage costs, paper costs. A lot of companies, like, you have to opt into mail. You get switched automatically to electronic. We know, with our customer base, we did not want to be that hardcore without a really dedicated public education campaign. So we talked a lot about broadening the scope of just the finance staff, but utilizing DPU has a marketing firm, on retainer, of utilizing that firm to help us develop a little more robust education campaign of making sure people are aware that we do have these other electronic options, and to try and get as many people to electronic as possible in that education before we would go to, we don't want to go to an automatic, but we definitely think there's room to shift more people to electronic.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a good contingent of the population who's not comfortable at all, or doesn't have access in terms of the digital divide. I would also speculate, and I forget exactly what the online fee is. A stamp is still cheaper than, in terms of processing fees, still cheaper to buy a stamp than it is to go online and pay the fee there.
Yeah, you're right about that, and that's something I've talked with the team about exploring. But also, I don't, that there is a cost. So just receiving the bill in and of itself, right? That's something that they could opt into that wouldn't necessarily cost them, but would help save. And so we're trying to explore ways, and is there a way we can utilize that value in some manner to motivate them to also pay electronically. But at the very least, receiving your bill electronically, that would go a long way to helping with the city costs towards that activity.
Sure. And have we seen an increase at all in electronic payments?
I wouldn't say an increase. It's been pretty stable. One thing I've asked the team to look at, and again, this is trying to be targeted and strategic about how we move into this, is we do have a customer base that is paying electronically, yet still receiving a paper bill. And to me, probably could be the low-hanging fruit of you're already it seems like comfortable with an electronic interaction. Would you be comfortable getting your bill electronically? So that's something we're going to take a look at, is maybe there's a targeted outreach we can do to that subset of population.
Maybe. I mean, I think, just to get the reminder in the mail, right? Don't forget. You're like,
yeah,
oh,
everybody's,
it's
yeah,
I got to get online now. So maybe. You don't know until you try. Vice Chair Carbasi, do you have any inquiries or questions?
I do. So first, I have 3 areas I have questions on. First is on page 3. And I know the chair covered a few of them. First off, it's very exciting to have this meeting. I'm honored that the chair would have me join him on the committee. I know I have a supportive father at home because he's actually watching right now. But he was an auditor, so maybe he likes this kind of a thing. Hopefully he's not falling asleep. Hi, Dad. So the whistleblower hotline, my hope is that there's no need for that. But what kind of raises my concern is, I think the city manager is right. When you put that on there, you're going to get calls for everything from the issues you raised to street racing. And we don't want that. We want it to be very focused because staff time is precious. And oftentimes, hopefully 99.9%, there's nothing there. It's that tiny sliver of, this actually is true and it's worth investigating. And by not having it, I don't want people saying, oh, well, you don't have a whistleblower hotline. What are you hiding? We're not hiding anything.
Sure.
And it seems like it's not difficult to actually physically implement. But can we get some kind of maybe commitment by the next time we meet that we'll have something in place, or at least some kind, if we can help in terms of resources, we can do that. And maybe have a policy where you can reject calls that clearly have nothing to do with this area of financial concern. I mean, what's realistic here?
Yeah, I think what we wanted to start with, if it would feel good to the committee, is looking at what types of concerns, because to your point, we want to welcome legitimate concerns. That helps us do our work. If it's even
there, right.
Right. But is there a venue or an opportunity to do that already within the city? And if so, great. How do we spell that out? Maybe be clear on the communication around that. That's where we'd like to start. And then if there's any gaps, maybe at that point determine if there's an alternative that we might recommend. But I was sharing with the city manager earlier, I mean, in my previous experience, we did have a fraud hotline that came into finance, and I don't think we ever got an incident in relation.
The hope.
Yeah, but it was mostly these other ancillary, I won't even give examples, but just things that we pursued looking into, but didn't really have anything to do with finance. But that's not the point.
To be clear, there is no reason to suspect anything. It's just having it there in case maybe we don't know about something and someone is not comfortable sharing, but they'll do it anonymously.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why Price Page recommended it, is exactly what you're getting at. Absolutely.
Okay. Got it. Page 7, regarding having multiple employees involved in the mail opening process. That seems logical. Is this just out of an abundance of caution, or was there something they found previously they said, well, maybe you should do it this way? No. Or is this more of an industry standard?
Yeah, so when they came in and did the assessment, they were here and they observed staff do work. And so what they do is they look for where is there potential gaps. And one thing they observed is as staff is opening up envelopes with cash or coin payment, right, that's an opportunity for potential fraud. And so their recommendation was to have 2 folks do that activity for that purpose. Okay. So didn't arise from a concern or specific incident, but just something they observed where we can get better and tighter.
Okay, page 8, items 2 and 3. On 2, I also want to follow up the chair's comments that this is a coincidence. I had a resident call me. I met her while walking door to door last campaign, and she had my number. She was having a difficult time paying her bill. Now, she's probably in her 70s or 80s, and she still does it the old school way where she calls on the phone and does it over the phone. The system wasn't working. It went back online very quickly, but it just reminds me there is a large segment of the population, they just aren't digital, as Council Chair Esparza mentioned. So, and there are folks that opt in, they just want paper. They don't trust for whatever reason, or they're just not online. I know there is an expense, but it's important. I really appreciate City Manager's comments that even though other companies make you have to opt into getting paper, we don't do that here.
Right.
So I think maybe we're 5 or 10 years away from going completely digital, but there's still a big segment of the population, or enough of a segment of the population of our seniors, they just want to stay old school.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that staff is continuing to do that, even though there's an expense for that. Unlike other private companies, we're a public agency, and we're very, and I really mean, it says a lot.
Yeah, no, it's something we've talked about at length, and what we definitely are sensitive to, and so that's why I think, like I mentioned, I've recommended, where are some spaces that we can look at that may be low-hanging fruit where folks are already doing electronic interaction, and maybe we just, by way of outreach or call, maybe they don't even know, and we start there, right?
The last thing was item 3, automatic meter reading. Again, is this one of those best practices types of items? There's no reason to suspect we have not been properly.
Oh, no. So what Price Page was recommending here is sort of like a cost-benefit analysis. So we've got automatic meter readings, and sometimes they're faulty, or we're having difficult signal, and so there's enhanced technology for the readers that can be employed at a cost, of course. And so it was doing analysis around that activity to see in certain instances, would it just make more sense to upgrade the technology versus having a meter reader go out, for instance. And so it's again, just being more strategic about our work.
Okay. Well, again, both report, very impressed with how you've been running the department, and kudos to yourself and City Manager and Ruthie. Just fantastic job. You make this really easy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, yeah, I think that was nice and smooth. That's really the conclusion of our 2 items. Appreciate your work, Director, and the work of your department. Yeah, I think that's going to be it for this Finance and Audit Committee meeting.
Great, thank you, and
yeah,
thanks
thank
for
you
the
all
comments.
staff, thank you our clerks and attorneys. Thank you. We'll adjourn.